reduction of sensory input, space, no demands. After a meltdown, rest, recovery, compassion, and analysis of what led to the overwhelm so you can prevent it next time. Not punishment, not consequences, not lectures about appropriate behavior, because it wasn't a behavior, it was a nervous system crisis. Understanding this difference is critical for supporting autistic children's emotional health. Fourth misunderstanding. Autistic people don't want social connection. This myth is particularly damaging because it leads to social isolation and loneliness, which are massive mental health risk factors for autistic people. The truth is, most autistic people do want social connection. They just want it on different terms. Many autistic people find neurotypical social rules exhausting, confusing, or nonsensical. Small talk feels pointless. Eye contact is uncomfortable or even painful. Indirect communication is frustrating, but that doesn't mean they don't want friends. It means they want friendships that work differently. Many autistic people thrive in friendships where you can talk about your special interest in depth. You can be direct and honest without social niceties. There's less emphasis on eye contact and body language. There's understanding about sensory needs and social energy limits. You can communicate via text when verbal is overwhelming. I've seen autistic kids who seem antisocial at school absolutely light up when connecting with other autistic kids, or when engaging with neurotypical kids who understand and accommodate their differences. The issue isn't that they don't want connection, the issue is that neurotypical social rules don't work for them, and they're being forced into a social framework that's exhausting and alienating. And when we pathologize their different approach to socializing, when we try to force them to act more normal, we're not helping them connect. We're teaching them that who they are is wrong. Here's another crucial point that parents especially need to understand: masking. Many autistic people, especially girls and women, become experts at masking, suppressing their autistic traits and mimicking neurotypical behavior to fit in. From the outside, a child who's masking might look fine. They might seem to be functioning well at school. They might appear social and engaged. But masking is exhausting. It's literally performing a different neurotype all day long. And what happens when these kids get home? They fall apart. They melt down. They shut down. They can't handle any additional demands. And parents are confused. They're fine at school. They save all the bad behavior for me. That's not bad behavior. That's what happens when someone's nervous system has been in survival mode all day and finally reaches a safe space where they can stop performing. Home is where they melt down because home is where they feel safe enough to let the mask drop. And if you punish that, if you say you can behave at school, so you can behave at home, you're not teaching better behavior. You're teaching that home isn't safe either. You're teaching your child that there's nowhere they can be authentically themselves. Masking is associated with significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. In autistic people, it's not a success story when an autistic child passes as neurotypical. It's often a mental health crisis waiting to happen. What your autistic child needs is not to learn to mask better. They need spaces where they don't have to mask at all. They need acceptance of their authentic self. Let's talk about something that confuses a lot of parents: emotional regulation in autistic children. Traditional emotional regulation advice doesn't work well for many autistic people. And when it doesn't work, parents think their child is being difficult or isn't trying. Here's why traditional approaches often fail. First, many emotional regulation techniques rely on interoception, awareness of internal body states. Many autistic people have reduced interoception. They don't notice they're getting overwhelmed until they're already in crisis. So telling an autistic child to notice when you're getting upset and use your calming strategies doesn't work if they can't notice until it's too late. Second, many calming strategies involve sensory input that might be overwhelming for autistic nervous systems. Deep breathing might make them more aware of uncomfortable sensations. Progressive muscle relaxation might be too much sensory information. Third, Many emotional regulation approaches assume that emotional distress is temporary and manageable with the right techniques. But for autistic people, the baseline sensory and emotional load is often already high. Adding a stressor might push them over the edge no matter what techniques they use. So what does work? Environmental modification. Reducing the baseline load so there's more capacity for inevitable stressors. This means reducing sensory input, noise-cancelling headphones, dimmer lighting, comfortable clothing. Reducing social demands, fewer forced social interactions, more downtime. Reducing unpredictability, clearly for autistic children. It's often covered by insurance. It's recommended by doctors. Many parents are told it's the evidence-based treatment. But we need to talk about what ABA often does to autistic emotional development. Traditional ABA focuses on behavior modification, making autistic children appear more normal. The goal is often to make the child seem less autistic, but here's what that does emotionally. It teaches autistic children that their natural responses are wrong, that their way of existing is unacceptable, that they need to perform neurotypicality to be valued. It prioritizes the comfort of neurotypical people over the comfort and authenticity of the autistic child. Many autistic adults who went through intensive ABA describe it as traumatic. They describe learning to mask extensively, learning to ignore their own discomfort, learning that their needs don't matter. They develop anxiety, depression, PTSD. They struggle with identity and self-worth. Now, I know some ABA providers have evolved their approaches. Some focus more on skill building than compliance. Some respect the child's autonomy more. But parents need to critically evaluate, is this therapy helping my child develop skills to manage their world? Or is it training my child to perform neurotypicality for my comfort? Is it respecting my child's neurology? Or is it pathologizing their natural way of being? Those are very different goals, and they have very different emotional outcomes. Let's talk about communication methods and emotional expression. Not all autistic people communicate verbally. Some are non-speaking. Some lose speech when stressed. Some find typing or AAC, augmentative and alternative communication, easier than speaking. The ability to speak is not the same as the ability to communicate. Non-speaking autistic people have rich internal lives. They have complex thoughts and emotions. They have things they desperately want to express. When we assume that non-speaking means non-thinking, when we talk about autistic people like they're not in the room, when we don't provide communication alternatives, we're causing immense emotional harm. Every person deserves a way to communicate. AAC devices, typing, sign language, picture boards, whatever works. And when autistic people get access to communication tools, they often have so much to say. Things they've been holding in for years because no one gave them a way to express it. If your child is non-speaking or has inconsistent speech, prioritize finding communication methods that work for them. Not just so they can tell you what they want, but so they can express their thoughts, feelings, preferences, and experiences. Communication is a basic human right. It's essential for emotional health. Here's something else parents need to understand. Sensory experiences are emotional experiences for many autistic people. When your autistic child says, "This shirt hurts," they're not being dramatic. They're describing a genuine sensory experience that is emotionally distressing. When they refuse to eat certain foods, it might not be pickiness. The texture might genuinely trigger disgust or distress. When they cover their ears in a noisy environment, they're not being rude. They're trying to prevent sensory overwhelm that would be emotionally and physically painful. Sensory distress is emotional distress. You can't separate them. So when you dismiss sensory complaints as not a big deal or force your child through sensory experiences because they need to learn, you're invalidating their emotional reality. You're teaching them that their pain doesn't matter, that they should endure distress to please others, that their internal experience is wrong. Instead, believe your child. Accommodate sensory needs when possible. Advocate for accommodations at school. Respect that certain sensory experiences are genuinely intolerable for them. This isn't giving in or being too soft. This is respecting that their neurology processes sensory information differently, and that difference is valid. Let's talk about co-occurring mental health conditions. Autistic people have significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, OCD, and ADHD than the general population. This isn't because autism causes these conditions. It's because living in a world designed for neurotypical brains while being autistic is chronically stressful. When you're constantly misunderstood, when you're struggling to meet expectations that weren't designed for your neurology, when you're masking constantly, when you're experiencing sensory overwhelm regularly, of course anxiety and depression develop. So when your autistic child develops anxiety or depression, the response shouldn't just be, let's treat the anxiety. It should also be, let's look at what's causing the stress and how we can reduce it. Maybe they need more accommodations at school. Maybe they need less pressure to be social. Maybe they need more acceptance at home. Maybe they need to stop masking so much. Treating this secondary mental health condition without addressing the underlying causes of stress is like bailing water out of a boat without fixing the leak. Now I want to talk about something that's hard for parents to hear your autistic child will face: discrimination, bullying, and misunderstanding throughout their life. They'll have teachers who don't understand them, peers who mock them, employers who underestimate them, medical professionals who dismiss them. You cannot protect them from all of this, but what you can do is ensure that home is a safe space. Home should be where they don't have to mask, where their neurology is accepted and accommodated, where they can recover from the demands of the outside world. If home is just another place where they're being told to be more normal, to try harder, to suppress their autistic traits, where do they get to rest? Where do they get to be themselves? Your job as a parent isn't to make your child less autistic. It's to help them thrive as an autistic person in a neurotypical world. That means accepting and celebrating their autistic traits, accommodating their needs without shame advocating for them in systems that don't understand. Teaching them about their neurology so they understand themselves, connecting them with other autistic people, protecting them from harmful therapies and interventions, building their self-esteem and self-advocacy skills. Let's talk about identity and self-esteem. Many autistic children internalize the message that something is wrong with them. They see themselves as broken, deficient, or less than. This happens when we frame autism as a tragedy or burden. We focus only on deficits and challenges. We try to eliminate their autistic traits. We praise them for acting normal. We apologize to others for their behavior. We talk about them like they're not there every time you do these things. You're teaching your child that who they are is not okay. And that destroys self-esteem. It creates shame. It leads to mental health crises. Instead, use identity-first language if your child prefers it. Many autistic people prefer autistic. Person to person with autism because autism is integral to who they are. Talk about autism as a neurological difference, not a disease or tragedy. Focus on strengths and interests, not just deficits. Connect them with autistic role models and community. Teach them that different is not less, that their way of experiencing the world is valid. Build their self-esteem by accepting them as they are, not conditional on how well they mask or conform. Here's something crucial about transitions and change. Many autistic people struggle with transitions. Not just big life transitions, but even small ones, stopping one activity to start another, leaving the house, shifting attention. This isn't stubbornness. It's difficulty with executive function and processing. Autistic brains often need more time to shift gears. Demands for immediate transitions can cause overwhelm and meltdowns. What helps? Warnings before transitions. In 5 minutes, we're leaving. Visual schedules and timers transition objects or activities, allowing them to finish a thought or action, when possible, not forcing instant compliance, when parents understand this. They stop seeing their child as defiant and start seeing the neurological reality of transition difficulty. Let's address something that causes a lot of stress: the push for independence. Many parents worry, if I accommodate my child's needs now, will they ever be independent? But here's what actually happens. When you accommodate needs and respect neurology, you build trust, reduce stress, and create space for skill development. When you force independence before a child is ready, when you remove accommodations too soon, you often create anxiety, trauma, and regression. True independence comes from Feeling secure and supported building skills at an appropriate pace, having accommodations that allow function developing self-advocacy and self-understanding. It doesn't come from forced exposure to things they're not ready for. Some autistic people will need lifelong support in certain areas. That's okay. Support isn't failure. Interdependence is a valid way to live. Your goal shouldn't be independence at all costs. It should be the maximum possible quality of life, whatever support that requires. Now I want to talk about something many parents don't know. Autistic people often experience emotions more intensely than neurotypical people, not less. The myth is that autistic people are cold, unfeeling, robotic. The reality is often the opposite. Many autistic people experience emotions with overwhelming intensity. Joy might be ecstatic. Sadness might be devastating. Anger might be all-consuming. Love might be intense and all-encompassing. This emotional intensity is part of why many autistic people shut down or have flat affect. It's not that they don't feel. It's that they feel so much that they have to regulate by appearing to feel nothing. Understanding this changes everything about how you interpret your autistic child's behavior. That shutdown might be feeling too much, not too little. That flat expression might be holding back overwhelming emotion. That overreaction might just be their actual emotional experience, which is more intense than yours. Let me address something about stimming, self-stimulatory behavior. Stimming includes things like hand flapping, rocking, spinning, humming, repeating words, or phrases, fidgeting. Many parents and therapists try to stop stimming. They see it as weird, distracting, or socially inappropriate. But here's what you need to understand. Stimming serves crucial functions for autistic nervous systems. Stimming helps with emotional regulation, sensory regulation, processing information, expressing emotion, self-soothing, maintaining focus, experiencing joy. When you suppress stimming, you're taking away a primary regulation tool. Now, I understand that some stims might be harmful, head banging, skin picking, or truly disruptive. In those cases, the goal should be redirecting to safer or less disruptive stims, not eliminating stimming altogether. But harmless stims, hand flapping, rocking, humming, should be allowed and accepted. They're not hurting anyone. They're helping your child regulate. I know it might look weird. I know it might draw attention. But your child's ability to regulate is more important than others' comfort. Teach your child when and where certain stims are safe versus when they might need to use more subtle stims. But don't teach them that stimming itself is wrong. It doesn't come from forced exposure to things they're not ready for. Some autistic people will need lifelong support in certain areas. That's okay. Support isn't failure. Interdependence is a valid way to live. Your goal shouldn't be independence at all costs. It should be the maximum possible quality of life, whatever support that requires. Let's talk about something that affects long-term outcomes, the difference between accommodation and enabling. Some parents worry that accommodating their autistic child's needs is enabling or preventing growth. But here's the difference. Accommodation means providing support that allows someone to function and thrive while respecting their neurology. Enabling means doing everything for someone in a way that prevents them from developing skills they're capable of developing. Examples of accommodation: noise-canceling headphones in loud environments, extra time on tests, written instructions in addition to verbal, allowing stims and sensory supports, providing clear schedules and routines. These things help your autistic child function. They don't prevent growth. They create the foundation that makes growth possible. Examples of enabling: doing homework for them when they're capable of doing it themselves. Never allowing them to experience any discomfort or challenge, not teaching age-appropriate life skills, removing all expectations. The distinction is, does this support help them function despite their neurology, or does it remove opportunities to develop capabilities they actually have? Your autistic child needs accommodations for the things that are genuinely harder due to their neurology. They still need opportunities to develop skills in areas where they're capable. Here's something about emotional safety and disclosure. Many autistic children and adults don't feel safe expressing their authentic emotions because they've learned it's not acceptable. They've been told they're too sensitive or overreacting. They've been punished for meltdowns. They've been shut down when they tried to explain their experience. So they learn to hide. to suppress, to mask. And then they have no safe outlet for processing emotions. Everything gets bottled up until it explodes. If you want your autistic child to come to you with their struggles, you have to create genuine safety. That means believing them when they tell you about their experiences, not minimizing their distress, not punishing emotional expression, being curious rather than judgmental, validating feelings, even when you don't fully understand them. When autistic people feel safe, they can share their rich internal world. When they don't feel safe, they hide it and suffer alone. Let me talk about school and the emotional toll it takes on many autistic students. School is designed for neurotypical brains. Classroom environments, teaching methods, social expectations, none of it was designed with autistic neurology in mind. Many autistic kids spend all day managing sensory overload, fluorescent lights, noise, smells, textures, navigating confusing social rules, trying to focus despite sensory and cognitive differences, suppressing stims and natural behaviors. Trying to understand instructions that aren't given in ways that work for them, it's exhausting. By the time they get home, they're completely depleted. And then parents are confused about why their child, who held it together all day, falls apart at home. It's not manipulation. It's burnout from managing an environment that wasn't designed for them. What helps? Advocating for accommodations, IEP or 504 plan, sensory supports, headphones, fidgets, movement breaks, clear. Written instructions, understanding teachers, modified expectations when appropriate, accepting that after-school decompression is necessary, and honestly evaluating, is this school environment workable with accommodations? Or is homeschooling or alternative schooling better for this child's well-being? Academic success means nothing if it comes at the cost of mental health. Let's talk about the emotional impact of therapy and interventions. Every intervention you choose for your autistic child sends a message. If you choose interventions that focus on making them seem less autistic, you're sending the message, Fior is not okay. If you choose interventions that focus on skill building and support while accepting their neurology, you're sending the message, you're okay as you are, and I want to help you thrive. Ask yourself about any therapy or intervention. Is this helping my child, or is it making them easier for me to manage? Is this respecting their neurology or trying to change it? Would I want someone to do this to me if I were in their position? Does my child experience this as helpful or as punishment/correction? Your child will remember how you made them feel about themselves. Choose interventions accordingly. Here's something about communication between autistic and neurotypical people. Many conflicts arise not from lack of love or caring, but from fundamental communication. Differences. Neurotypical communication relies heavily on implication and reading between the lines, body language, and tone, social conventions and expectations. Indirect requests. Autistic communication often works better with direct, explicit statements, literal language, clear expectations, written, as well as verbal communication. Neither is better or worse. They're just different. But when neurotypical parents expect autistic children to communicate neurotypically and punish or criticize when they don't, it creates constant friction. Learning to communicate in ways that work for your autistic child isn't giving in. It's respecting neurological differences. And honestly, most people would benefit from more direct, clear communication. Let me address something about the future. Many parents of autistic children worry constantly about the future. Will they be able to live independently? Will they have friends? Will they have relationships? Will they be employed? This anxiety is understandable, but it can also become overwhelming and transfer to your child. Here's what I want you to know. First, autistic people have incredibly diverse outcomes. Some live independently, some need support. Some have typical careers, some find alternative paths. Some have romantic relationships, some don't want them. Some have lots of friends, some prefer solitude. None of these outcomes is inherently better or worse. They're just different life paths. Second, the best predictor of positive outcomes isn't how normal can we make them. It's strong self-esteem and self-understanding, acceptance and support from family, access to appropriate accommodations, development of self-advocacy skills, connection to autistic community, mental health support when needed. Third, your job isn't to guarantee a specific future outcome. It's to support your child in developing skills, understanding themselves, and building a life that works for them. Maybe that looks like what you imagined. Maybe it looks totally different. Either way, it can be a good life if it's authentic to who they are. Let me talk about something crucial: listening to autistic adults. Autistic adults have lived experience that can teach you so much about what your autistic child might be experiencing, but can't yet articulate. Many autistic adults can tell you what it felt like to be misunderstood as children, what helped, and what hurt, what they wish their parents had known, how interventions affected them long term, what they needed, but couldn't ask for listen to them. Read their writing. Follow autistic advocates on social media. Join groups for autistic-led discussions. Not every autistic adult's experience will match your child's, but you'll gain insight and understanding you can't get any other way. And importantly, believe autistic adults when they tell you something was harmful, even if professionals recommended it. Trust lived experience. Here's something about celebrating your autistic child. Does your child have intense interests? That's not a problem to fix. That's passion and depth worth celebrating. Does your child communicate differently? That's not a deficit. That's an opportunity to learn a different communication style. Does your child experience the world intensely? That's not too much. That's a rich internal life worth honoring. Does your child need accommodations? That's not weakness. That's self-awareness and self-advocacy. Reframe how you see your child's autistic traits. Look for the strengths, not just the challenges. Every trait that seems problematic probably has a flip side that's valuable. Rigid equals strong sense of justice and fairness. Obsessive equals passionate and deeply knowledgeable. Sensitive equals empathetic and emotionally aware. Socially awkward equals authentic and genuine. Your child needs you to see their value, not just their challenges. Let's talk about something that affects many families: sibling relationships. Having an autistic sibling can be complicated for neurotypical kids. They might feel jealous of attention and accommodations, embarrassed by public behaviors, responsible for managing or explaining their sibling, guilty for struggling with these feelings. These feelings are valid and need to be addressed. But here's what's important: frame autism in your family as difference, not tragedy. Don't apologize for your autistic child to their siblings. Don't make them feel like they have to compensate for their siblings' existence. Teach siblings everyone has different needs. Fairness doesn't mean identical treatment. Their feelings are valid, and their autistic siblings' needs are valid. How to be supportive while maintaining their own boundaries. That disability and difference are normal parts of human diversity when you create a family culture of acceptance and understanding rather than shame and burden. All siblings benefit. Here's something about self-care for parents. Raising an autistic child in a world that doesn't understand autism is hard. Really hard. You're constantly advocating, constantly educating, constantly fighting for appropriate support, constantly defending your child against misunderstanding. It's exhausting, and it's okay to acknowledge that. You need support too. Find it through parent groups, especially those that listen to autistic voices, not just warrior parent groups. Therapy for yourself, respite care when you need it, connection with other parents who get it, taking breaks and practicing self-compassion. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. But also, be careful about where you seek support. Some parent groups focus on autism as tragedy, on venting about their children, on seeking cures. That mindset is harmful to you and to your child. Seek spaces that frame autism as difference, that center autistic voices, that focus on accommodation and acceptance rather than normalization and cure. Let me end with this. Your autistic child is not broken. They don't need to be fixed. They need to be understood, accepted, and supported. The goal is not to make them less autistic. The goal is to help them thrive as autistic people. That means respecting their neurology, accommodating their needs without shame, accepting their communication style, supporting their regulation strategies, celebrating their interests and strengths, advocating for their needs, creating safety for their authentic self, connecting them with autistic community, building their self-understanding and self-advocacy. Loving them exactly as they are when autistic people are accepted and supported, when their needs are accommodated rather than pathologized, when they're not forced to mask and suppress themselves, they thrive. They develop healthy self-esteem. They build meaningful relationships. They pursue interests and careers that fulfill them. They live good lives. But when they're taught that who they are is wrong, when they're forced to suppress their natural neurology, when they're constantly corrected and modified, they develop mental with identity. They feel broken and worthless. The difference isn't in the neurology, it's in the response. You have incredible power as a parent. You can be the foundation of acceptance and support that allows your child to thrive. Or you can be another voice telling them they're not good enough as they are. Choose acceptance. Choose accommodation. Choose celebration. Your child is counting on you. If you're a parent of an autistic child and this episode challenged your thinking, good. That means you're open to learning and growing. If you're autistic and this episode validated your experience, I'm glad. You deserve to be understood. If you found this helpful, if it opened your eyes to something you needed to understand, please hit that subscribe button. Please like this video. And please share it with other parents of autistic children, with educators, with therapists, with anyone who needs to understand autistic emotional experiences better. The algorithm doesn't promote content that challenges conventional wisdom, but you can help spread it to the people who need it. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what's the biggest thing you learned? What are you going to change? What questions do you still have? Let's build a community of people who understand that autistic emotional experiences are different, not deficient. I'm Shul. This is Big Feelings Lab, and I'll see you next week. Remember, different is not less. Your autistic child's way of experiencing emotions is valid, valuable, and worthy of respect. Take care of yourselves, and take care of your autistic loved ones by accepting them exactly as they are. If your child is autistic or if you suspect they might be, do not skip this episode. I'm serious. What I'm about to tell you could fundamentally change your relationship with your child and their entire emotional well-being. I'm Shul, researcher and educator, and this is Big Feelings Lab, where we take the latest science on emotions and turn it into tools you can actually use. Today, we're talking about autistic emotions. And I need to be very clear from the start. Almost everything you've been told about how autistic people experience emotions is wrong. Not just incomplete, not just outdated, wrong. And these myths, these fundamental misunderstandings about autistic emotional experiences are causing real harm. They're damaging relationships between parents and children. They're leading to inappropriate interventions. They're contributing to mental health crises in autistic kids and adults. And when parents treat meltdowns as tantrums, when they punish, shame, or try to behavior modify them away, they're not just ineffective, they're causing harm. You cannot punish someone out of a neurological response to overwhelm. You can only traumatize them and teach them that their nervous system's distress signals are unacceptable. What autistic kids need during and after meltdowns is completely different from what you'd do with a tantrum. During a meltdown, safety, reduction of sensory input, space, no demands. After a meltdown, rest, recovery, compassion, and analysis of what led to the overwhelm so you can prevent it next time. Not punishment, not consequences, not lectures about appropriate behavior, because it wasn't a behavior, it was a nervous system crisis. Understanding this difference supporting autistic children's emotional health. Fourth misunderstanding. Autistic people don't want social connection. This myth is particularly damaging because it leads to social isolation and loneliness, which are massive mental health risk factors for autistic people. The truth is, most autistic people do want social connection. They just want it on different terms. Many autistic people find neurotypical social rules exhausting, confusing, or nonsensical. Small talk feels pointless. Eye contact is uncomfortable or even painful. Indirect communication is frustrating, but that doesn't mean they don't want friends. It means they want friendships that work differently. Many autistic people thrive in friendships where you can talk about your special interest in depth. You can be direct and honest without social niceties. There's less emphasis on eye contact and body language. There's understanding about sensory needs and social energy. Become experts at masking, suppressing their or become experts at masking, suppressing their autistic traits and mimicking neurotypical behavior to fit in. From the outside, a child who's masking might look fine. They might seem to be functioning well at school. They might appear social and engaged. But masking is exhausting. It's literally performing a different neurotype all day long. And what happens when these kids get home? They fall apart. They melt down. They shut down. They can't handle any additional demands. And parents are confused. They're fine at school. They save all the bad behavior for me. That's not bad behavior. That's what happens when someone's nervous system has been in survival mode all day and finally reaches a safe space where they can stop performing. Home is where they melt down because home is where they feel safe enough to let the mask drop. And if you punish that, if you say you can behave at school, so you can behave at home, you're not teaching better behavior. You're teaching that home isn't safe